Let's talk about PwC Nigeria, a leading and advisory firm operating in the country and across Africa, has identified 10 themes, or what we call key areas, that Nigeria needs to focus on for socio-economic transformation. And the 10 themes are results of a survey conducted by PwC, and they were subject of a webinar held today on Nigeria's economic outlook for 2021, as well as the new Finance Act of 2020. Joining me to speak today is the fiscal policy partner and West Africa tax leader at PwC Nigeria, Taiwo Oyedele. Good evening, and thanks for making the time on the show.
Good evening, Boston. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Good to have you in our studios. How did PwC arrive at this particular, what they call the top 10 themes or issues for Nigeria? Are they all urgent in terms of priority?
Yes. Thank you very much. So what we did was, just looking at the economy and then thinking about what can we do in the immediate term and then short to long term to try and transform the economy, particularly given where we find ourselves now, to ensure that we not only recover from the recession, but we build back better and that our growth is inclusive. So also on the back of the Finance Act 2020, which has generated a lot of reaction from all stakeholders, we then thought it would be good to bring stakeholders together, particularly executives, business owners, SME, managers, and so on and so forth, to have a very meaningful conversation and engagement on these important issues along with government. So we had the Honorable Minister for Finance, Budget and National Planning in attendance, and many other senior people from government side. And then as part of that whole process, we conducted a study just to find out the pulse of business leaders across Nigeria. But before then, our own analysis, which was done by our economics team, led by Andrew Nevin, who is our chief economist, is to say, well, what are really the 10 most important areas that we need to focus on as a country if we must transform Nigeria? And I can quickly run through them. One of it is to unlock debt capital. And we've been on this now for a few years, really, is to say that we have over $900 billion worth of debt capital all over the country that are not productive now. Biggest of it will be in the real property sector. We can easily transform that to create prosperity for our people. Number two is to harness power of diaspora and brain capital. We have Nigerians all over the world, and Nigeria actually receives more inflow of remittances from the diaspora than any country in Africa. We also think that even beyond our people leaving Nigeria to go abroad, we can actually be exporting brains of Nigerians without them leaving Nigeria. So, especially with COVID now, what can we do to earn money using our brain capital? Number three is to move informal sector to formal sector. The more the informal sector you can formalize, the better for the country, because that way, not only are they within regulation to ensure that what they're doing is proper and appropriate, you also give them the opportunity to be able to scale, like getting credit, access to management capacity, and so on and so forth. Number four is to improve the business environment. It's difficult doing business in Nigeria, that's the reality, and it's not just about infrastructure and electricity, which are important. Sometimes it's about regulation that can actually come in the way of doing business. Number five is to drive exports growth through services. 2/3 of the world's GDP is actually made up of services. So while it's important to do manufacturing and produce goods and services, manufacture cars, we actually can do a lot more in services. And to be honest, Nigeria is a service economy. More than 50% of our GDP in Nigeria is made of services. And that's one area of our economy that is less impacted by poor infrastructure. So whether you're talking about Nollywood or the creative sector as a bigger sector, or whether you're talking about entertainment, whether you're talking about technology, whether you're talking about innovation, financial services, banking, legal services, those are areas where we can easily have advantages. Six is to spread growth across the country. Growing in a few urban centers will not solve our problem. What this government is doing is at least commendable, ensuring that poorest people in villages don't go hungry. But we need to go beyond just putting food on the table for poorest people to actually building, prosperity for them. Some of the things we need to do is create access road for those villages so that their farm produce can get to the cities without them losing half of what they have struggled to produce. Then address Nigeria's big three distortions. We see very important distortions we need to address. Number one of that is foreign exchange. So the CBN is committed to harmonizing the rates. We haven't seen that yet. We need a unified rate that is market determined. Number two distortion is electricity. And everybody knows what that means without going into too much details. Whether you're talking about generation, transmission, and distribution, all of that have issues. Yes.
A quick one here. Taiwo, just quickly, cut in very quickly, respectfully to your conversation. As we're speaking, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is making a State of the Nation address in terms of the response to COVID-19. Of course, we got the news that South Africa has received the first 1 million dose of AstraZeneca's version of the serum that will be given to health workers as a front line in South Africa. Right now, the president is speaking on that as a State of the Nation in South Africa. We'll keep that in the news very quickly. Thank you so much, Taiwo. Let's continue. Give me your top three. You talk about the top 10. Now, let's break it down. Give me the top three.
Yes, I think the top three will be certainly addressing the big distortions. If you can address foreign exchange, electricity, as well as subsidies. I know that electricity will take time for you to address. I'll say next to that would certainly be unlocking debt capital. And then number three will be to improve the business environment. Those are the themes we believe will transform the Nigerian economy. If I may, based on what you have on the screen, we then ask about the Finance Act specifically. What are the top three issues people are most excited about? Reduction of minimum tax for companies, because really, you shouldn't make companies pay tax when they are making losses. Number two is just being able to use technology like email to relate with the tax authority. Given that we even have COVID now, nobody wants to be going physically to tax authorities' offices. And number three is to just exempt small businesses from preparing audited accounts. These are really very small businesses. And they don't need all that pressure and cost of trying to prepare audited financial statement. They can prepare just management accounts and get by with that. So we also have areas where people are not very excited about, and the top three is one, people are not happy about the unclaimed funds trust fund around unclaimed dividend and. Yes.
If you permit me to, let's move this conversation on this particular Finance Act to the second part of this conversation after the break. But I just want, what suggestions would you advance on how Nigeria can move the huge informal economy or sector into formal economy? That's one of the top themes that you folks discuss at PwC.
Yes. Yeah. So in terms of moving the informal sector to the formal sector, you need to start by saying, why is it that anybody will want to remain in the informal sector rather than formalizing their businesses and having all the opportunities that are there? There are a number of issues. Number one is, and I'll say taxes plays a major role. So until 2019 Finance Act, it was the case that if you had a small company, to run your business, you paid close to about 40% just income tax alone. Whereas if you had an enterprise or a sole proprietorship, you paid a lot less than that. So some of those issues have been addressed. Another issue that you have also is the lack of access to information, the lack of access to the knowledge and the know-how, as well as the complications and regulations if you want to formalize your business. This Corporate Affairs Commission has reduced some of those costs now, and we're hoping that in no time, all the other impediments, particularly around regulation, would also be reduced significantly because there's the benefit for the country, for the individuals, for household, when you move the informal sector to the formal sector.
Okay, just a quick one. We'll talk about the business environment. What more would you like to see or get done by the government?
I think the issues around business environment is always to do with policy. Sometimes the approach is wrong, in my view, and that government is looking for money to fix all our problems. I do not think that we need, because we actually don't have the money. By the way, one of the areas that we also identify is gross capital formation. If you put all of our budget into infrastructure alone, it will not be enough. So what you need to do is to focus on what are those policy issues: fiscal policy, monetary policy, trade policies. Why is it that we have about $19 trillion around the world today earning either 0% returns or negative returns, and people are not bringing them to Nigeria where the returns are in double digits? It must be something to do with the environment. So when you fix all those, starting with policy, of course, there will be infrastructure regulations. We think that the opportunities are enormous for us to, transform our country.
So, Taiwo, the finance minister is holding a brief tomorrow morning about the Finance Act 2021 or 2020. I'm sure you're aware of that. 10 o'clock in the morning. Let's talk about that when we come back. You're welcome back to Arise Exchange. So the Buhari's administration seems to have connected with the Nigerian business community with his Finance Act, and the second one for 2020, which is now on the streets. Tomorrow, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, according to the Twitter handle, will be doing what you call the Series 1 of the Finance Act virtual stakeholder engagement and consultation, 10 o'clock in the morning, local time, Tuesday, 2nd of February. I'm sure Taiwo Oyedele of PwC Nigeria, you're aware of this particular event. I'm sure you have your ears to the ground.
Yes, that's correct. So what the finance minister is trying to do is, and by the way, there were a series of engagements before even presenting the bill to the National Assembly, which is now a law, Finance Act 2020. But even after that, is to say that the journey for engagement and consultation is a continuous one. It should never end, and we should never close the doors. So what the minister wants to do, which I do agree with, is to engage with stakeholders on a sector-by-sector basis to see, what's their feedback about the Finance Act? What would they like to see government do differently? And I believe that, if there are feedback that suggests that there's a need for amendment, like you said in your introduction, because we now see this as an annual event, it means that those things can easily be logged in for changes in the next Finance Act. So, yes, it's very welcome in my view.
Yeah, but it looks like you folks in the business community are happy with the Finance Act 2020. Based on the report that you push out today, it looks like, by survey, it looks like the government is connecting. So I'm trying to ask, what makes it, what is in this particular Finance Act that makes it so everybody's lapping it up as something really good from the administration?
Yeah, you're right. The survey we conducted came back with a positive 92% thumbs up. So 92% of people who responded, this is over 1,000, mostly business leaders, saying that they are fully in support of the provisions of the Finance Act. They're not saying it's perfect, but they're saying overall it is good. In terms of why is it that people are supporting the Finance Act? Well, I think it's because everybody realizes that this is a very difficult time for our country. We're having to borrow more money because revenues are low, but yet government is making and taking some bold steps, like exempting people who earn minimum wage of 30,000 naira or less from tax. You don't have to pay personal income tax at all. So what this means is a lot of SME owners will not have to worry about the burden of tax compliance. And then there's the one about reduction of minimum tax that affects all companies in Nigeria that have to pay a percentage of their turnover. That has now been reduced.
Now I get it. Yes. When you reduce tax for Nigerians so they don't pay tax, everybody's happy with the government. Now perhaps that's the reason.
I think it's not the only reason. Some of it is reforms. For example, you have reforms to make sure that government is more responsible and disciplined in terms of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and also to improve the procurement procedures. So people always say that government is not leading by example, government is wasteful. This is now a bold step in the right direction to try and correct some of that. And you also have some provisions in the law to improve refund system, so that when you overpay your taxes, government pays you your money back, like they do all over the world. Sometimes you can spend 10 years in Nigeria just trying to get a refund of the money you pay to VAT account instead of company's income tax account, which is a very honest and genuine mistake. So it's not just about the reduction in tax rate. It's also the commitment that government was true to that commitment not to introduce new taxes and not to increase the rate of existing ones. So these are the combination of the reasons why people, I believe, are fully supportive, or the large majority of people are supportive of the Finance Act.
Do you think the Finance Act will help Nigeria achieve growth in the current year, Taiwo?
I'll say it will contribute to it. The reason why we would achieve growth, which means we recover from our negative territory of GDP to the positive territory, certainly this Finance Act will contribute into it. It will not be the only reason why we'll have positive growth. We need so many things to work together, including, unfortunately, things that are not within our control, like the price of crude oil in the international market. If the price of oil per barrel it goes up to $70 or $80, the next GDP quarter Q1, Q2 will be positive. Whereas if it goes down to 20, it doesn't matter what else you do, we are going to end up with another recession for the next few quarters. So I'll say yes, it will contribute to development of the economy.
So is Taiwo Oyedele, is Finance Act come to stay? Is it a silver bullet that Nigeria needs for socio-economic development?
I'll say yes and no. We have laws that are
double answer.
I'll tell you why it's double answer. So we have laws that are older than any of us, including almost everybody who is watching this program. Like the Stamp Duties Act is older than 80 years. Even before our independence, and we are passing them every year. So what the Finance Act does is amending the laws. We need to. That's why I said yes. On one hand, it's a stopgap measure to try and fix. There's a car that is not moving well. You try and patch it and fix it and replace the engine or the battery. But then ultimately, what you need to do is just to buy a new one. So we need to get a point where we reform the entire tax system, starting with fiscal policy, moving on to legislation, and rewriting them. Why don't we have the tax laws today in Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, and even Pidgin English? Why don't we speak modern day English and we're speaking, the archaic English that you read it, you want to pay tax, right? You read the tax law and you're confused. It's already painful to pay tax. It's double, punishment to then have to struggle to figure out the taxes you need to pay, who you need to pay to. We have multiplicity of taxes as well as multiplicity of agencies. Even EFCC is doing tax audit. And then you have all manners of people collecting taxes at local government level. Some of those taxes not getting to government. So we need a lot more than the Finance Act, but it's the first baby step that we need to take.
Okay, we thank you for your time. Taiwo Oyedele, Fiscal Policy Partner and West Africa Tax Leader at PwC Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.